everybody, welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching today. Today I am going to show you how to make this fun fold card. I'm calling this an illusion card, and it came about after the split panel card I showed you the other week. So I was playing around and I wondered what would happen if I took out the center panel and replaced it with acetate, and as you can see you get a really lovely effect, and it looks like whatever you put in the middle is floating. So I really liked this card. I've played around a bit and tried a few different designs, and I'm going to do one for you today. So we're going to be using A4 white cardstock from, I think it might have been Poundland. We're also going to be using gold Miri card from B&M. I'm going to be using the Sticks 2 A4 acetate sheets from Hobbycraft. And I'm going to be using this patterned paper set. This was actually from Hobby Lobby, I think it was, in LA, but you can use any paper you want. I love Memento ink for stamping. I'm going to be using red liner tape to attach my acetate. I'm also using white glue from Hobbycraft, and this stamp set is from Creative Stamping issue 67. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get a piece of A4 white card, and then you're going to trim it down, and you're going to trim it down to 11.5 by 6 inches. So I've done 6 inches as the short side and 11.5 across the long side, and then this will fit in a 6 by 6 envelope. You're also going to need a piece of Miri card and another piece of white card. The white card measures 5.25 by 5.5 inches. This is going to go on the back, and that's where I've stamped my sentiment. And the Miri card is going to measure 5.5 by 5.75. And you can see me in the card there. Hello! Then you're going to need some acetate. You can do that anywhere between 2.5 to 3 inches, and it needs to be by 6 because the card is a 6-inch card. And I've already attached my red liner tape to this just for speed. Then you're going to need some patterned paper for the front, and this is going to measure 1.25 by 5.5 inches. You need 2 pieces of those, and then the Miri card, you need 2 pieces that measure 1.5 inches by 5.75 inches. And then you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that match your base colour. These are going to measure 1.75 by 6 inches. And I'll tell you more about those later. And then you're also going to need your sentiments to make it float in the middle, and any other embellishments. I've used coins here that I cut from a paper pad. And then for inside the card, you need a piece of patterned paper that measures 5.5 by 5.25 inches. And you're going to need a piece of Miri card which measures 5.5 inches by 5.75 inches. Okay, so let's get into how to make this. The first thing we're going to do is put the card on a scoreboard with the long side being the 11.5 inch, and you're going to score at 5.75 inches. And then if you measure 1.25 inches from the bottom of that card and 1.25 inches from the score line you just done, and make marks on the card, you're then going to cut along those marks. So you end up with a top flap that measures 1 3/4, and you end up with a second piece of card which will be 1 1/4 by 6, and that will then become the bottom of your card. So the next thing we're going to do is attach the patterned paper to the Miri card and put it inside the card. It's just easier to do this now before you've attached the front, so I always make this the next step to do. Now, because of the dimensions we're using, this patterned paper will only fit onto the Miri card one way. So as you can see, if I put it on that way, it's not going to fit, so I have to turn it and put it down so that the border is 1/4 inch. I always do my borders at 1/4 inch. I just think it looks nicer. I'm making sure I've got nice straight even borders, and this rule goes for the sentiment on the back as well. You can only put it on one way, and you can only attach them one way. As you can see, I'm playing around to find out the best way before I add my glue. The reason I use wet glue when I'm doing fun fold cards, I really like the fact that it gives you a little bit of manoeuvrability if you put something in the wrong place, or if you want to alter something. It gives you that wiggle room, it gives you some thinking time. This glue that I'm using, although it does give you some wiggle room, it does dry really quick, which I quite like, because it means I don't have to hang around waiting for something to dry before I can move on. I get quite impatient when I'm doing something. I just want to get it done, especially now I've got the baby, because most of the time I'm trying to craft during nap time, so I just want to get done. So this glue lets me do that. It gives me wiggle room, but it dries nice and quick. So there's the inside of the card all done now. Nice even 1/4 inch, can't even talk now, 1/4 inch border, and we're done. Now in a second we're going to be attaching the cardstock to the individual flaps, but before we do that we will attach the acetate. So to do that, I'm using my first edition die release tool to take the release papers off. I actually thought, because I'm trying to film and do this, it's quite tricky, and I was scratching away at the acetate by accident, so I had to flip it over and try again. So I'm using the pointy end of my die release tool to release the release papers. I then place this onto the middle of the card, and starting with the loose panel, I'm going to make sure that the loose panel matches up with the base of the card before placing it down onto the tape, and then I can just fold over that top panel to complete the front of the card. But I want it to be nice and straight before I do that. And now you can see we have the beginnings of the card. The base is completely done now. So now what we can do is add our extra cardstock. Now the reason I've decided to add extra cardstock is, first of all, it hides the acetate, because I didn't want the acetate showing if somebody lifted up the front of the card. But the other reason I'm using cardstock on the back is to try and reinforce the front. I've tried a few different ways of doing this card, and I tried various different card GSMs, and because we've taken away that centre panel, which really gave the card some strength when it was a split panel card, the front can be quite flimsy. So by reinforcing it using the cardstock, it just gives it that little bit extra strength. But the stronger GSM cardstock you use, the better. the one that I'm using today isn't that strong, but I wanted to use a white cardstock just so everything would stand out to you and you could see the different elements and things. So use a really good GSM cardstock to help support it. So now that's done, I'm just going to burnish the top of the card again. And I'm going to put the panels on the front now. So I'm just going to adhere the patterned paper onto the Miri card again. It's a 1/4 inch border that I'm going to leave. I really like leaving little borders. I think it looks nice. You don't always want to completely cover a card. And I think these papers work really nicely all together as well. And I really like the gold Miri. Interestingly, I've seen gold Miri card and I've seen silver Miri card in packs, but I've not seen any other coloured Miri. I'd quite like some different colours. I've got some that came as single sheets, but I'd quite like different packs because I use Miri card quite a lot. I think it looks really nice as like the borders. So if anyone knows where you can get packs of other Miri card, please feel free to leave a note and comment, and then I'd be able to get some. Okay, so that's the first one done. I can just pop the other one down on the top. Again, I want a nice even border, and especially because I'm using the Miri card, if you don't leave the same size 1/4 inch border all the way around, it's going to look wonky. But as you can see, it all looks in a nice line. So that's the front of the card done. Just going to flip it over, attach the sentiment onto the Miri card base and pop it on the back. The nice thing about this is it does give you a nice big place to write your message and to write a greeting to someone. And again, this section will only go on one way and leave a 1/4 inch border because of the measurements we've used. Before you stick your sentiment down though, do make sure you know which way the card opens and which way is up, because you don't want your sentiment to be upside down. Equally, if you were using directional papers, you need to make sure you know which way the card's going to open so that they go the right way. So now I'm going to decorate the front up, and I'm going to do the floating elements. Because the front is quite flimsy, you don't want to use anything too heavy. And again, I'm using wet glue to stick these down. I'm not putting the sentiment on straight. I actually did a workshop with Claire Rowlands of Daisy May Designs last year, and she's really got me into jaunty angles. I really love a good jaunty angle now when I put stuff down. So the thank you is at a slightly jaunty angle. I'm not going to decorate the panels of the card, not on this one. As you can see on the ones at the beginning of the video, I have done in the past, but I just decided to leave these as they were. And that's the finished card. As you can see, the sentiment and everything floats, and you've got a nice large space in the back. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you find it easy to follow, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.